Join Gator great Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning and welcome to PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It's Monday, got a lot to talk about. We're going to be joined by Andy Staples momentarily from The Athletic, and we'll also have Edgar Thompson from the Orlando Sentinel. No JC today. Oh boy, a lot of stuff to talk about. The Gator baseball team are your SEC champs, co-champs. They're the number one seed when everything starts in Hoover, Alabama. This week in the SEC tournament. So congratulations to Sully and the rest of the team. Gator softball season is over. It's one of those seasons where you just chalk it up and get ready, bringing in one of the top recruiting classes in America. They will bounce back for sure. If you missed it last night, boy, the Heat just destroyed the Celtics. It's 3-0 there. The Nuggets have a chance tonight to wrap up the series there against the Lakers, and probably will. They're just way better. And then the PGA Championship, we'll talk a lot with Edgar because he likes golf as well. Boy, one of the greatest sporting events I've ever seen. If you're not a golfer, a gentleman named Michael Block, who played his college golf at Mississippi State, he's a teaching pro out in California. Boy, he played unbelievable and is now qualified for next year's PGA Championship. Has been invited to the tournament this weekend, the Canadian Open. Just a remarkable story. And it's just you had to see it. Has a hole in one, just outstanding. And congratulations to Koepka. Has more major wins than he does regular wins on tour. So he is a tough dude. Andy says, "Have I ever had a hole in one like Michael?" I've had two. I don't know if mine didn't go in like that, but I've had two in my golfing career. Let's go to the Titan More Highline. We're joined by a guy who probably has multiple hole-in-ones because he's a great golfer, Andy Staples. Good morning, Andy. How are you, my man?
Not a great golfer. The closest I ever came was actually on West End Golf Course.
West End.
Out on Newberry Road. May it rest in peace. Par 3 left at about 2 inches from the cup. Of course, I didn't notice that because I spent about 5 minutes looking for my ball because I couldn't imagine it would be in that part of the green.
Yes. All right, Andy, we're getting all kinds of text here. I got a bunch of stuff for you. But first of all, I want to ask you just your thoughts. Obviously, a lot of people, you wrote an article a few days ago, I guess, maybe it was last week, about the state of the Gator football program. Just talk briefly about that for people that didn't read it, how they can read it. I read it. I got a couple of questions for you as well, but just give us an overall general thought process of why you wrote that and where the Gators stand.
Well, you can read it at The Athletic, and it's part of a series that we're doing on some different programs that are not where they want to be. And basically the assignment was give a 30,000-foot view of the Florida football program for folks who maybe haven't been following Florida so closely, explain how Florida got here after Florida was winning SEC and national titles like crazy for about an 18-year period. And then, for the folks who know Florida a little better, explain a little deeper why. And so I got into the basics of it, which all the Florida fans know, facilities wise, that their whole thing for years was, well, it's Florida. That should be enough. And it took them a while to catch up on that. NIL, we all know what happened with Jaden Rashada. You followed along as they've kind of tried to figure out their organization, which I think they got it in a good place right now. And then just the coaching situations, like the end of the Dan Mullen era, which we got a little bit deeper into, and just how strange it's been. And Scott Strickland, the athletic director, was really interesting because his thing was, the goal is not to have a good season every once in a while, because Florida's been doing that. It's to get off this roller coaster and start having consistently good seasons. And that's hard to do in this environment in the SEC right now. because Georgia's so good. Alabama's so good. I think Brian Kelly's going to make LSU really consistent year after year after year. So now you've got to figure out how to do it in this hyper competitive environment. And the question is Billy Napier doing that? And Strickland, asked for time. Napier has said over and over again, this is not a fast process. And my question is, okay, it's not fast, but what we've seen historically, and at least in recent history, is that the best coaches came in and you saw something fairly immediately, whether it was year one or year one going into year two. You haven't seen a lot of people have that slow burn to success. I mean, the last one I can think of is maybe Dabo Swinney.
Yeah, I agree with that. We got a text here from an anonymous texter. He didn't want me to tell you who it is. He says Andy has been anti-UF.
It's Freddie Weeby. I know.
Oh no, no. This is from a 321 area code.
Oh, okay.
It's not. It's on our Titan MR text line. It's not our personal text line. It
Okay.
says Andy has been anti-UF lately. People need to realize, even though Andy's a grad, played ball for the Gators, he has to write.
Well, here's the thing. Do you want me to lie to you?
Right.
Or do you want me to tell you the truth? Like,
exactly.
It's not anti. It's what's going on.
Yeah. So my thing is, and we had a text. It's really long, and I'm gonna paraphrase it. It was from George. George was talking about everybody's upset about the Gator football program, blah blah blah. But if you really look at the Gator football program, the history of it, 20-year success rate. Success rate. I mean, when you think about under Galen Hall, Charlie Pell, few good teams, whatever. But then Spurrier, Urban, other than that, it's just kind of been. So people got spoiled in that era. I get it. And with Georgia, what they're doing now, Georgia's not going to slow down. Talk about the NIL and the facility standpoint. And I know in your article you talked about, you had a quote in there, something about Spurs said, we don't need all the indoor facilities, which when Lightning came, we went in, we didn't even practice. We just went inside. We were done. Yeah. But we needed a standalone facility. And I don't think anybody had that. I think your article talked about maybe LSU, Alabama, Tennessee had indoor facilities.
No. Everybody's had standalone facilities for the last, like Tennessee had one 23 years ago when I started covering Tennessee.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
Alabama's had one for a long, long time. LSU's had one for a long, long time. Now, the Florida and Florida State are kind of the two stragglers. Florida's already built theirs. Florida State is just now got the plans in to build theirs. They'll tell you, they'll point to the spot where it's going to be. But Florida and Florida State were kind of the last two. Clemson, theirs is fairly new, but it's now 8-9 years old. That's the one with the slide and everything. This stuff doesn't have to have all those bells and whistles. Like you go to Alabama's, it's actually not, you don't get blown away by the bells and whistles. It's not just a bunch of waterfalls everywhere. And they do have waterfalls in their training room, but it is more functional than anything else. And, Georgia's had a building forever, and they've recently improved it quite a bit. But, that was sort of the cost of admission in the SEC, and Florida, it took a while on that, and in Spurrier thing, I always think is interesting because when he got to South Carolina, he changed his tune very quickly. Now, a lot of that was because South Carolina's facilities were awful. I think they had mold or something like that. And they had to figure out how to get mold out of the locker room. So it was a dramatic shift in his view, but it didn't change at Florida for a while. And, Jeremy Foley had come around on it at the end of his tenure as the AD, because remember the plans for what is now the Heavener Center were started before Jeremy retired. They were started before Scott Strickland was hired. McElwain was still the coach when all that stuff got started. And then Strickland actually put the brakes on it because he had just built one at Mississippi State, and he was trying to figure out, okay, if it works the way it's supposed to, because this is when they were going to shoehorn it in and leave McKeithen Stadium where it was. And it was going to be like the football facility is going to be a 4-story thing. And Strickland had just built one at Mississippi State and was like, okay, a lot of the things you're trying to get out of this, you're not going to get if it's this 4-story thing. So he asked, hey, can we move the baseball field and build it differently? Which of course required him to raise more money, required a lot of other things. And so now you have, Gary Condren Ballpark and the Heavener Center, which took some time. But I will say, from a football facility standpoint, Florida's caught up now. Yes. I called that the last excuse, but then NIL came. So that's
what I was going to ask you. I was like, I've been preaching about the facility for so long, and then bam, damn, NIL came about, and that whole thing is a mess right now. Let me ask you, because a lot of Gator fans, they get upset because they say Gators don't move fast enough in NIL. I don't know what that means, because the kid has a choice of where he wants to go to school, but isn't there proof that there's some issues with admissions for the student athlete, or no?
It's not as bad as everybody thinks. I don't think they're not Harvard or anything. I know people feel that way, but there are schools that have an easier time admitting players than others. And Florida does have that occasionally, but it's not like Stanford, where the person has to be admitted and you're not, that, like, they won't even tell the coaching staff if they're going to admit the person until late in the process. Most schools are not like that. Like, I remember I shadowed when James Franklin was at Vanderbilt. I shadowed their staff right around signing day, and they were looking at players, and even Vanderbilt can get a lot more people in than you think. So that's not really a big issue. They can get players in that they need to get in. If they can't get them in with the standards that most of the better state schools in college football use, then that person's probably not going to make it anyway. That's why they do it. You look at Michigan, you look at schools like Michigan has very high academic standards for the normal student body. They obviously can admit people who don't necessarily meet those standards for football. And you see they're getting very good athletes in the school. They're putting them in the NFL. They're winning the Big Ten. Like, it's not that big of a hindrance. It's Notre Dame, it's a hindrance. Stanford, it's a hindrance. But at Florida, it's not really a good excuse. And the NIL thing, the moving fast, it's not about moving fast. It's about being organized. I think Florida State's a good example of this. They don't have this massive NIL war chest. They're really good at deciding how to portion it out. Like, they give it to the players who are the best, and that allows them to keep the best players that they have on their roster. And if you look at how they've built it, they made sure Jordan Travis and Jared Verse got taken care of first. The players who succeeded at Florida State are the ones that are getting, and Florida, I think that's what Billy Napier wants to do. I think that's what the new Florida Victorious, the NIL collective that kind of has taken over everything else, that's what they want to do, because that's what works. Let's be real here. It's funny because we've seen this in every sport. Like, in the NFL, all these rookies were getting these massive contracts, and the veterans are like, what is going on here? But they had the NFLPA that could go negotiate a rookie salary scale, and all of a sudden Sam Bradford isn't the highest paid quarterback in the league, coming in without playing a snap, and the right people got the most money. And so you got to do that yourselves in college football. And I think we've only seen this for 2 years, but I think there's enough evidence to show, like, paying heavy on the front end is not a good strategy. You look at A&M last year, they had a lot of NIL promises for that number one recruiting class, but they took a lot of people who, it seemed to me, wanted to just take the biggest bag. Some of those players are really good and are going to be good for them. Some of them were terrible influences on their locker room and are already gone. So I think that's the part that, and this is not just a Florida thing. Everybody's got to get their arms around that and figure out how to do it best. But honestly, the best way to do it, and this is frustrating, because if you're not already good right now, it's hard to just sort of turn the page and make this work, is to just take care of the players who are the best already. And then they succeed. The recruits come in, they see them succeeding, they see what they're doing in NIL, and they can say, okay, that can be me in a couple of years. And That's what you want. Now, the problem is that your Georgias, your Ohio States, your Alabamas, they add to that. Look how many first rounders we make. Well, that's still the best recruiting pitch in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Is here's all the first rounders we've just had. So that's the thing that if you're Florida, if you're Texas, if you're Oklahoma, all the schools that are trying to get to that point, you've got to start doing that and have your older players succeed in NIL, and then you can make that pitch to the incoming to the high school recruits, and they'll believe it.
Bruce Ogre State Farm Office is a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visitogreinsurance.com. Give them a call at 352-240-1779. Speaking with Andy Staples from the Andy Staples Show and The Athletic. Andy, we got a text here on the Titan Mar text line from Donald. He says, Andy, love listening and reading your material. What are your surprise teams in college football in the country and maybe a surprise team in the SEC?
So in the country, if we're listening to this on Monday, you can go to my show, the Andy Staples Show, wherever you get podcasts, and we talked to Audrey Snyder, who's the Athletics Penn State beat writer. And me and my co-host Ari Wasserman have this ongoing argument about Penn State, because Ari's like, oh, they're always going to be a notch below Michigan and Ohio State. They never can get over that hump. They actually might have the team to get over that hump this year. They've got a guy named Abdul Carter, maybe the best defensive player in the Big Ten. They've got high-end talent at a bunch of places where they just haven't had that in that abundance in a long time. And so if you look at them compared to Michigan and compared to Ohio State, they compare very favorably. So I think those are the ones that would be potentially the surprise national contenders, because I don't think they're that far away from Michigan and Ohio State. And if you can beat them, you can be in the playoff, even with a 4-team playoff. And so I think that would be my one for the nation. For the SEC, Texas A&M is complete boom or bust. Like, it will be a disaster, or it'll actually be pretty good, because like if you take Texas A&M's players, they're starting 22 and they're out of uniform, you put them in the same room as the starting 22 at Alabama and LSU, that you won't really be able to tell the difference. But the problem is, if A&M has some injuries at some key spots, I don't think their depth matches Alabama's or LSU's. So that's where it could become an issue. And at this point, we have not seen Texas A&M be able to beat the teams they're supposed to beat. And that's been a big problem for Jimbo Fisher since he's been there. But if they can do that, I think they could be competitive in the SEC West. The problem is, if it goes off the rails, it will go off the rails badly.
Yeah, I think they got some really good talent on offense, and I think Petrino is one of the best play callers in all of college football.
Yeah.
We'll see how that whole dynamic deal works out there. Like you said, it could be a disaster. George says, Andy, your thoughts on Colorado? How do you think they do this year?
I think the other schools in the Pac-12 are going to try to send a message to Colorado, because they've upgraded their talent, so they will be better than last year. But they open with TCU and Nebraska. Those are non-conference games, but those are games where you got TCU coming off the national title game, and they had to change their roster quite a bit. But they were in the transfer portal heavy, got some players that I think can come in and play right away, and they should be pretty good again. Nebraska trying to make a point in the first season under Matt Rule. And then you've got, I'm trying to remember the exact order of their Pac-12 schedule, but I believe their first two Pac-12 games are Oregon and USC.
Ooh.
They're going, like, Oregon is going to try to beat them by 1,000,000 just to make a point, because they're going to say, Dion, we are the top dog in recruiting in this conference. You may think you're going to have a roster like ours, but we are going to build because Dan Lanning, look, he worked at Georgia. He's been at Alabama. He knows what a national championship roster looks like. That's what he's trying to build at Oregon. You look at what they did in high school recruiting and in the transfer portal. They've upgraded seriously. That team that got pounded against Georgia at the beginning of last season, the bodies look real different now. So I think that's going to be it's going to be interesting. And the other thing about Colorado that I think is interesting is the way Dion handled this roster flip. I don't know that helps you in recruiting going forward, because one, you post spring practice, you got rid of everybody. That's fine. But there wasn't the kind of talent in the portal that would allow you to upgrade from the people you got rid of. So why did you treat them that way? Because if I'm a coach recruiting against you, I'm going to go look at how he treats people on his roster. And they're going to be parents and they're going to be players that look at that and go, you know what? That's not for me. So I don't understand the point of that, because there was no upside to it. If there was a ton of talent in the transfer portal in the April window, I would have understood maybe, because you can continue upgrading the roster. They were not at a point where they could really upgrade the roster anymore. So why'd you do that?
Yeah, I don't think they win 3 games looking at their schedule.
That's what I keep saying. If they win 4 or 5, build a statue of the man, because it'll be a really good coaching job.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Bob wants to know your top 4 teams right now on whatever today's date is that will make the 14 playoff.
Okay, I'm going to go Georgia. I got to go Michigan because they continue to be better than Ohio State when they play. And I just said Penn State, but I need to see that first from Penn State. So Georgia and Michigan. And then I am very skeptical of USC until I see their defense actually play physically. And they needed to upgrade their talent. They did that through the portal. You know, their D-line looks like it's supposed to look now. I know they're going to score a ton of points. So I think there's a chance there. But I do think that the team that comes out of the SEC West might be a playoff contender. And so that could be LSU, or that could be Alabama. I'll say LSU. Now, where's the other one come from? So I'm not picking USC until I see it. So I got Georgia, I got Michigan, I got LSU. I'm gonna go with Clemson. I think hiring Garrett Riley as the offensive coordinator is what they needed. If you look at the times Clemson has surged under Dabo Swinney, it is when they've brought some new blood in and changed things around, brought some new ideas in. And you know, you look at last season, you lose coordinators on both sides of the ball. You hire from within in both cases. If you were going a little stale, that's a recipe to continue going stale. Now you bring in some fresh ideas. And if you look at when they brought in Chad Morris, when they brought in Brent Venables back in the day, that's when things evolved quickly for them. So now the question is, do they have the talent still to hang with the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Ohio States? I don't know if we're going to see that till they play those guys. Now, they're going to probably have to beat Florida State twice to get there. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I still, I'm going to give the nod to the people who've been there, and that's Clemson. Florida State is going to challenge them. I think we'll find out when Florida State plays LSU exactly kind of where they're at from a talent standpoint. I think they're pretty good. I don't know that they're quite at that level yet.
Yeah, we got a couple questions about the semis here. I'm not a believer in Florida State. I was not a believer in Florida State last year. Watching the tape before the Florida game, getting prepared for it, I was like, they're a decent team, but they're not that much different than the Gators. And I think we proved that on the field. I want to say they only beat one team with a winning record last year. I think Clemson wins the ACC hands down. But Andy wants to know, do you think the semis will be a top 10 team this year?
I think they'll start in the top 10.
Yeah.
Now, it really depends on what they do against LSU. If they beat LSU, they'll be in the top 5, and then we'll see what happens with the Clemson game. The question for Florida State is, do they win the games they're supposed to win? And like the Florida game is one of those that I'm with you. I didn't think the teams looked particularly different when they played in Tallahassee last year. You know, if they're evenly matched in the swamp, and Florida is sitting there with 7 wins or with 6 wins, and Florida State sitting there with 9 or 10 wins, then we can probably just chalk that up to the ACC being a weaker conference.
Mm-hmm.
But, if they start, let's say they go to Clemson in September and win, or they beat LSU, which this version of LSU, remember, they were playing an LSU team that was working out a lot of the kinks under a first-year coaching staff last year. If they beat this version of LSU, and if they can beat Clemson, then we need to recalibrate our expectations. I will say the guy they just got, Keon Coleman, the receiver, really good. And you put him with Johnny Wilson, that's a pretty dangerous receiving core. I think they're going to be able to put up some points this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like you said, they got to beat I know they beat LSU last year, but as you said, LSU played about as bad as they could possibly play in that game.
And still almost
And
won.
right. And whatever happened last year, I try to tell people has no bearing on this year's game. I just don't know how good they are. I think Clemson with the higher, I think K. Klubnik, if that's his correct
Yeah, that's
pronunciation.
the QB. Yep.
If they played him last year, they would have been a different team. They may have been in the playoffs because DJ Uiagalelei can't play at all, in my opinion. So Matt on Facebook Live, before we get you out here, Andy, and I'm just going to let you know, I'm on record that the Gators win minimum of 8 games, and I'm not being a homer.
Wow.
I think they're going to be better than people think.
Okay.
Because they're going to be more consistent on offense. They may not have will be better, and I think they will be much better on defense. And I don't think the schedule is hard as people think. I think there's 2 games that I've chalked up as no way we win them unless the other team turns it over 5 or 6 times. That's Georgia and LSU.
Yeah.
But I think everything else is a toss-up. Matt on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellon Law, wants to know, what is Andy Staples' prediction of the Gators' record?
So I think they're better than Vegas thinks. I don't know if they're better. I don't know if I think that I'm better. Yeah, I can't talk. I don't know if I think they're better than you think.
Right.
I think we're talking about 7-8 win range here, because I'm with you. And if we're to believe that this roster build is about chemistry, and that's why they didn't go as heavy in the portal and flip it as thoroughly as some other programs have, then that chemistry should show by the end of the season. And I know Florida doesn't like to be compared to Florida State, but I think it's a pretty interesting comparison, because I think what you want to see is what Mike Norvell actually did. What Mike Norvell did at Florida State is he took over a disaster of a program, and they couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't fire him after a couple bad years. He had time, and he got to build it the way he wanted to. And what you saw at the end of that second season for Norvell, they didn't have the greatest record in the world, but they were fighting in every game. It was clear the arrow was pointing up. And that's what you want to see from Florida right now, is you want to see that they're competitive against the really good teams, that they win the games they're supposed to win, and is the arrow pointing up at the end of the season. And I think there's a chance that happens. I think it'll be frustrating still. I think there's a segment of the fan base that's still going to be frustrated if it's a 7-5 season, because they just expect more every year from Florida. But that same segment is going to be frustrated with 8-4. We've seen them be frustrated with 9-3. So I think you just got to understand that if this is a rebuild, if they are really building towards something special toward the end, then you have to look at trajectory more than you have to look at results. Because, recruiting wise, we will see what they wind up signing in December. I would say that seems to be tracking pretty well. So do they play hard for Billy Napier? Do they fight? That sort of thing is what I'm looking for. And if you end up with a 7-5 record, but the games you lost against really good teams, you put up a good fight, they were close, and then you beat teams you were supposed to beat. There was no weird, like, losing at Vandy. There was none of that.
Yeah.
Then you're like, okay, this could work.
Yeah. So we'll see. Andy, good stuff as always. We appreciate your time. Let everybody know how they can watch your show and read all your stuff. You got any deals with The Athletic going on right now?
Oh, they're always doing something. I don't know if we're in the $1 a month phase, but you can find me at the Andy Staples Show wherever you get podcasts. Also, the Andy Staples Show YouTube feed if you like to watch your podcast. Like, I got to get the swamp background that Shane's got. That's the way to do it. Just
indeed.
Coming live from the swamp.
Yeah, I mean, why not? That's what we're going to go fishing and go hunt some alligators here pretty soon after the show. So,
are you actually on an airboat? Because that would be you really just need to get like an airboat chair. It'd be the perfect setup. Do.
That's a great idea. Great idea. Hey, man, appreciate it. And we'll see you soon, bud.
All right. See you, Shane.
That's Andy Staples joining us on the Titan MR Hotline. We are going to take a quick time out. We're going to come back. We'll be joined by Edgar Thompson for the Orlando Sentinel, talking golf, Gator baseball, all kinds of good stuff. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the Morning.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, Comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise. Campus USA Credit Union. QC Kinetics. Live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's. Eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wibby, Realtor Caldwell Banker, MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Aver and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Hi, Steve Spurrier here. You know, making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, a number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Celebration points where the Gators go to celebrate with premium brands like Regal Cinemas, The Keys, Dave & Buster's, Palmetto Moon, Starbucks, Visors, and HBC's Restaurant Spurriers Gridiron Grill. We'll see you at Celebration Point where the Gators go to celebrate. Going to head to the Titan More Hotline now. We're joined by Orlando Sentinels, Edgar Thompson. Good morning, Edgar. How you doing, my man? That beer's looking good.
I tell you, it's getting a lot out of control, but yes, I'm just rolling with it. No, I'm doing well, man. We were just talking about the golf before we came in, right before I was updating our fantasy golf standings.
Oh,
yeah, well, we picked up Koepka before the Masters.
who's we?
My buddy and I in South Florida have a team. We're the defending champs too. This league's been going on since 1996.
Can I get in the league next year?
Sure.
How many golfers do you pick for each event?
8. You pick 8 guys for the season, or 6
Oh,
guys
for the
season.
I got you.
6 now because of Liv. So we picked up Koepka before the Masters. He had that great Masters. So we're like, we're going to stick with him. So we're rolling, man. We have Rom too. So our team, I'm entering the new updated standings. Anyway, so yeah, that's fantasy golf. Nobody wants to hear that. But we are diehard golf people. So that's, I know you wanted to talk about that. That just gives people a glimpse into my sickness with golf.
Yeah, well, I absolutely love the majors, and I enjoyed watching this tournament at Oak Hill. And I was talking to all my buddies I play golf with, and I've played a lot of golf courses, and sometimes you don't remember what golf courses you play. And I was thinking, you know what? I text my buddies on our golf text feed the other day. I said, you know what? I think I've played this golf course, because when I was with the Buffalo Bills, and I need to go back and check, you would think I would remember what cities we had training camp in, right? All of the teams I played for, but I really don't remember. I can't even tell you the little college that we went to when I was with the Redskins, but I'm pretty sure we were in Rochester, somewhere outside of Rochester, for Buffalo Bills training camp. And I think one day when we had an off day or a special teams practice, Drew Bledsoe and I went and played this damn Oak Hill, but I can't remember. And I text Drew, he didn't text me back. But anyway, long story short, it was a great golf tournament. Kudos to Koepka. I mean, think about it. This dude has won more majors than he has regular tour events. That's crazy.
So what's he? I know they're talking about that. I don't know how many tour events he's won. What is it, 4?
4. So, but listen to Koepka's career in majors against Tiger. Okay, he has a 14% winning percentage compared to Tiger's.
I saw that 16-5.
16. He's got 25% top 3 finishes compared to Tiger's 28. He's had 39% of top 5 finishes compared to 36% by Tiger. And he's got 50% top 10 finishes. Tiger's only got 45. But just his demeanor is just unbelievable. Obviously, I've always been a huge Koepka guy. And Cam Smith, when they went to the Live, it pissed me off. But I get it. But they're still great players. And watching him yesterday was just unbelievable the way he played.
What's funny, so I covered golf for the Palm Beach Post for, I don't know, 16 months or whatever. Wasn't the best career move, let's say. It wasn't really my choice. They wanted more golf coverage. First story I was assigned, NCAA Regionals 2010, Brooks Koepka on the phone when he was at FSU, because he's a West Palm Beach kid.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm covering the golf scene there, and I'm covering this kid, 16-year-old kid, Chase Koepka, and then his dad, Bob. And I've got to know the family. Bob's great. And Chase was just mature, you know, like he wouldn't be like one of these like kind of 16-year-olds a lot of time. You don't know whether you're going to get engagement or not. I just did a story on a young woman, in fact, who's playing in the Epson Tour event in Howell in the Hills this week down there in Mission Inn, El Campeon, which is a beast. That's a tough golf course. I don't know if you played there. I have looked up now, so we can finally get some golf on the books maybe. But anyway, so this young woman was so impressive. She played in Anwa. She's 16. We talked for like a half an hour. She was unbelievable. This was like Chase Koepka, just engaging kid. Meanwhile, Brooks has never really had that reputation. He's capable of it, as we're seeing, but he always was kind of aloof. And it was hard to really kind of get on the bandwagon with him a little bit because of that for me. But his game's impressive, and he seems to be coming out of like, he's much more honest and open now. I think he was humbled by all the injuries.
Yeah.
And he's kind of changed, because when he was just winning 4 majors in what was a 3-year span, I mean, he had no time for anyone. But the guy's an unbelievable talent. 5 majors takes you, and I know they talked about this in the telecast some, takes you to a whole nother level. And think about it. Phil won his 6th major 2 years ago, beating Koepka, right? In the playoff. I mean, not in the playoff, head-to-head at Kiowa.
Mm-hmm.
And that took Phil that long to get his 6th. So you get to 5, you're with Seve, you're with Peter Thompson, the great Australian, and then Byron Nelson. That's some heady company. And you leave behind Ernie Els, who had 4, Rory McIlroy have 4. You know, there's some real great players with 4, but now Koepka's elevated himself to a whole nother level. And then you're suddenly like in range of guys like Trevino, Faldo, Phil at 6, Arnie, Snead at 7, Varden. I mean, he's going to get to a level that very, 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 he already is, but very few players will at this generation particularly.
The great thing about his story is, you know, usually when guys, the Rory McIlroys, the John Rahms, all these guys either go to college or come straight, you know, at 17, 18 years old, join the tour. You've heard about them at a young age. You know, they're supposed to be the next this or the next that. Koepka was kind of a nobody, went over and played the Challenge Tour or whatever the hell it's called.
Yeah.
And he's had to kind of work his way. So that's why I like him so much. We got a couple of Facebook Lives here brought to you by Metal Law for you, Edgar. Well, first of all, this one, Vince says, true or false, Koepka wanted to attend UF, but we didn't offer him a scholarship. That is true.
Yeah.
Van Der wants to know,
smart move.
do you have a prediction for Gator Fred Biondi's pro career? It's so hard to choose. Now, look, they have a chance to go out and win the national title if they all play well every day. But it's so hard to predict these kids coming out of college, how they're going to do on tour.
I mean, it's just so competitive. He could get stuck on, you know, the Corn Ferry for a few years. Fred's got a lot of game. I mean, Ricky Castillo is the one I think that's always been viewed, though, as the most promising professional prospect of this group, for sure. You know, so we'll see. But the team's great. That last week was some tenuous stuff, man.
Oh,
I couldn't believe how they played and then like came through in the clutch. They keep it exciting, but they can't be falling in those kinds of holes.
no.
It's like it's like Rory does at the majors often. You know, he comes out and shoots 75 in the first round, scrambles back in it, but you can never win that way. So the Gators are going to have the foot on the gas starting from day one. And I think this team should get to match play. Even I did a story last week speaking to JC. I'll probably go out before they leave this week to do another one. But he's like, look, he said it's going to leave a bad taste in our mouths if we don't get to match play, which has been going on since 2009. You have to get in the top 15 teams after 3 rounds of stroke play, which starts this Friday, I believe. And then they have 15 teams advance, and then you got to get from that 15, you get one more round to get in the top 8. And then those 8 teams square off in match play where anything can happen.
Yeah, and JC's actually going to be on our program tomorrow, JC Deacon. So,
good.
Tony says, Shane, if you played Oak Hill, it was only a couple of years after it hosted the 2003 PGA. And he goes, that's when you play a lot of golf, when Oak Hill is just blends in. Like I said, I'm waiting for Bledsoe to let us know, because I'm not even sure what we had training camp. It was some little college, and I thought it was in Rochester, but I could be wrong.
Well, Oak Hill's changed a lot. You know about all that. They restored it. So
yes.
Donald Ross designed the course in 1924. In fact, he did UF 1921. I mean, Donald Ross has courses all through here. Daytona Beach. He's got a bunch of Florida courses. Seminole. I mean, the best course in the state is Donald Ross 1929 or 30. But anyway, so Donald Ross is like maybe my favorite architect. He's certainly among the few. I grew up on a Donald Ross course in Richmond, and they totally changed that course multiple times, and they've restored it this past few years, but it's still not the original Ross. Ross did not have those old courses, Shane. First off, they didn't have the agronomy and all the equipment to water and have all that rough. They just didn't. His fairways were like 60 yards wide. So they've pinched that thing in and grown the rough up. That course is impossible. I mean, you would have, you're not breaking 150 on that golf course, man.
I know.
You are in the rough. You're just hacking it all day. You're in bunkers you can't even see out of, and 4-putting all day. I mean, it's just brutal conditions. Those guys make that stuff look so easy.
They do.
It's amazing.
My buddies and I were texting, curious what we would shoot. Ted, thank you. St. John's College. Yep, that's where we went to training camp.
Okay.
Tell me if that's near Rochester, Ted. Appreciate it. Hey, Chris Doring Mortgage. They do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doring Mortgage today, 352-244-0840. Edgar Thompson on the Titan tomorrow text line. Edgar, let's switch. Gator baseball, man. Sure. SEC champs. They'll be the number 1 seed. They'll either play, I think, Kentucky. I can't remember.
Kentucky, Georgia play tomorrow.
Yeah. When's our first game?
It's 5:30 on Wednesday.
Okay. So, it's, and I was speaking with, I guess it was Steve Russell or someone last week. This is one of those deals where the Gators are pretty much locked in as a top 8 seed. Obviously, as a competitor, you want to go compete and play and try to win the tournament. But being the 1 seed, you have a much better chance. You don't have to play so many games. So we'll see how it all transpires there in Hoover. But
look at the
good year.
It makes the football in the SEC look like just so in terms of rankings. It's like 5 or 6 of the top 8 or 9 teams in the nation. I don't have it in front of me, are in the SEC. It's unbelievably stacked. You win the SEC tournament. My God. I mean, that's a big ask. They've won 2 of them under Sully, but this is his 6th SEC regular season championship, even though they shared it. So it's nice to see this. The program is lost, as you know. COVID year, that team was rolling 16-0 before a midweek game against FSU, where FSU kind of sold out with a good pitcher and won that. But otherwise, they've lost. They haven't advanced out of the regional the last 3 times they've had a chance. I believe it's 3 times. So this team's going to make some noise, unlike those.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people saw on Twitter, Sully, the whole baseball celebrating when they knew it. Did you see Sully running around, high-stepping?
No, I actually didn't. Was it good?
Oh, you got to see that on Twitter. It's great. Rick says, Shane, you don't want to remember Oak Hill because you probably shot 109. I will tell you this: if I did play Oak Hill, it wouldn't have been set up like it was, but I probably still would have shot a bunch.
Yeah, but you were probably playing up too. You're not playing it at 74.
Yeah, not playing where they play. And Yes. Yeah. So 7 miles from, I bet I did play that thing. And you would think that I would remember that. But as I said, I've had multiple concussions and there's some things I remember, some things I don't. Um, Edgar, gosh, I just lost my train of thought right there. There's a prime example of it. I had a good question for you and I can't even remember what it was going to be.
Was it baseball related?
No, it was baseball related. And my question is like when you look at, I mean, so you look at the Gators, what they did this last 2 week span. I mean, obviously they play really good baseball. Um, where have you been covering the Gators a long time? Is this one of those type of teams? Is it? I don't want to say it's one of Sully's best, but they can make a run in your mind. They have a very good chance to get to Omaha, correct?
Yes, but I'm just going to be honest with listeners because I try to be forthcoming. I am not like dug in on baseball like some guys. I mean, you really want to, you should get on here, Shane, Nick Delatorre. I mean,
Nick loves baseball. He's all
he
in
goes
that.
to every single game. I'm kind of like view it from afar. I was at the Vanderbilt third game. Taglione pitched, had his best outing in a long time, and then built on that and had another great outing. Now you have a number 3 starter with that guy's ability. He can really throw. He's left-handed. So you have a number 3 starter who's won 2 in a row now and gone deep. 6 and 2/3, I think, Vandy, in 7 innings. And then he had 9 strikeouts, I think, in both games. So he is really coming on. We know how good he is at the plate. He has a score record with 28 home runs, leads the team with 76 RBI. But the guy who's really come on too is Wyatt Langford. Langford had a back injury or something earlier this year and was just not swinging it like he had been. Now he was hitting for average, but not power. This kid has 2 multi-home run games in the last week. He had 2 against Vandy. He had 2 in the second game against Kentucky. So in a 3-game span, he had 2 multi-homer games. He's a beast, man. He came out afterwards. Taglione was still in his uniform. Wyatt showered. He comes in. He's just wearing kind of a loose tee. And this guy is just a monster. I mean, I don't know if you've seen. I mean, he looks like a linebacker. He is a talented kid. He's a top 5 pick. And then you have Taglione. And then you have Josh Rivera. It's deep. Sprode is a very good number 1. They got a lot of pieces, man. And they can go deep in the lineup. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but they got guys hitting 7, 8 who can hit out of the yard and produce. So it's a very, very good team. It's the best one he's had in a good while. Kind of like the golf team. It has the pieces. I mean, this team should get to Omaha and threaten for a College World Series, just like the Gators should get to the match play.
Yep. This Day in Sports brought to you by our good friends at Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life at Campus USA Credit Union. In 2022 at the PGA Championship at Southern Hills, Justin Thomas beats Will Zalatoris by 1 stroke in a 3-hole playoff after 50-hole leader Mito Pereira double bogeys the 72nd hole. So that's This Day in Sports brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. All right, let's switch gears to football real quick. I want to say tonight, Billy's speaking at the Fighting Gator Touchdown Club here in Gainesville. He's going to meet with the media. Will you be there, Edgar? And you have a great question you're going to ask Billy Napier tonight?
Not really. I mean, I'm actually finally getting around to this Austin Armstrong piece I've been meaning to do. I spoke with him God, it feels like a month ago. I'm kind of ashamed I haven't finished this story, but I'm going to do it in the next day or so. Interesting guy. I was going through the interview last night, Austin Armstrong. My God, and you know how it all works with coaches and how all the connections and all this, how you get from this place to that place. This guy by age 29, he's like a coaching lifer already at 29 years old, but he's impressive, man. And I'm just going to ask Billy, who was a young guy at Clemson, if you think about it. Remember, he's 26. I think he's a league recruiting coordinator at 26. How you operate in a room with all these veterans and you still carry that kind of command. And Austin Armstrong he's like, look, man, I've been put in charge to make decisions and to run this defense. I'm going to do it. I mean, even though he's in there with Corey Raymond, Sean Spencer, and Mike Peterson. But I guess the question for Billy I'm curious about is next week is destined. Okay, spring meetings. A lot's going to be discussed. The 8 to 9 game schedule is going to happen next week, even though there's kind of some split on that right now. And there's going to be a lot talked about. Texas, Oklahoma are going to be there next week. So I'm wondering, last year when we asked Billy about Destin, he was always kind of like, yeah, man, I got too much on my plate. I'm just curious how dug in Billy is on other things outside the Gators program personally. Does he look at the big picture now more, or is he still just very myopic and focused on what the Gators got to do? Because, one thing I liked about Dan Mullen, I mean, Dan, you'd ask him anything about like big issues and he'd talk about them. I don't know that Billy is that guy. Billy might just be laser focused.
I got 2 questions for you, Facebook Live here, but I got to get your quick thoughts on Michael Block, the PGA teaching pro, which to me was one of the greatest sporting events I've ever watched. What he did with the hole-in-one. Now he's going to play next week in Fort Worth. He's been invited to the Canadian Open. I mean, it's just a tremendous story. I've never seen anything like it. I
was texting with my best friend from high school. I was a little bit behind. I put it on pause and did a couple things because all the commercials drive me crazy. It's just too many. So I was like a little behind. I was like, you kidding me that Block just made this hole-in-one? I had goosebumps all over my body. It was so awesome. And then his up and down on 18. Oh, that up and down was brutal. He barely limped it on and then makes the putt just limping into the hole to get into next year. So amazing story. He handled it with such class. And he was crying like when Amanda Balanos, or however you say Balionis, was interviewing him at the end and like talking about his son, and he was choking up. So I'm sure you appreciated that. It was pretty special moment.
Yeah, it was awesome. All right, Greg says here on Facebook Live, brought to you by Metal Law, I read that QB Austin Simmons is reclassifying to 2023 and will be on campus soon. Any truth to that?
I mean, that's what we've been hearing from the beginning. I mean, someone's been telling me that the Gators probably or wouldn't. He said wouldn't, but I'll say probably because I don't know definitively, wouldn't have pursued him if he weren't willing to reclassify. Because he's 2025, but he's graduated. He's a sophomore, maybe stayed a year behind. An incredibly bright kid. His GPA is off the charts. I think he wants to major in engineering. I mean, he's extremely bright, but I think they wanted him. It's like, look, if you're willing to reclassify and come in here in 2023, we'll take you. Because they got Lagway next year. Did they really want 2 guys with those kind of credential? I don't know. It sounds to me like it's going to happen.
Is there a certain time period when it has to happen by?
I mean, he's got to be on campus by the time preseason starts, but I don't have all that in front of me. I don't know how that works. I mean, there was something I read, I forget who wrote it, that behind the scenes, maybe Zach Alberverdi actually said that that's what it was, that he's already discussing with the admissions department how to kind of make it happen. Because I'm sure it's a process, just like anything. You fill out tons of paperwork and, have it all vetted and everything like that. So, but hey, if anybody on here, I know when I have a couple of minutes, has a Billy question, toss it my way. Billy is not the most forthcoming guy. So I'm just going to kind of get big picture with him on a couple of things. But I don't know if there's really anything to right now. I mean, look, the team is back, right? They got back about a week ago, didn't it? Didn't a lot of the players?
I have no idea. I haven't been on campus since I've been back. So
last Monday, I think people returned. So they're already back at it, man. It's like there's no off season anymore for these guys. I mean, back when you played, I'm curious. Did you have off season at all?
Edgar, first of all, I hardly even lifted. I'd go do our running, and then I'd be playing pickup basketball, go to the golf course, try to figure out how to play golf in college. We did not do all this stuff they do now.
Yeah, no structure.
No, zero. Just kind of do your own thing. And, as long as you made your 12-minute run under your certain time, that's all Coach Spurrier cared about.
It worked.
It was the easiest damn conditioning test ever. Edgar, enjoy the meetings tonight with Billy?
Yeah, Billy's doing something, probably 10, 15 minutes. And the next week, the SEC meetings. We should talk about that when I get back. It's going to be a whirlwind. I'm taking off early Tuesday and driving back late Wednesday, man. I'm going to do it very tightly. I used to go for the entire week. Not anymore, man.
Well, be safe. We appreciate your time. Let everybody know how they can follow you on Twitter and read your stuff at the Orlando Sentinel.
OS Gators always provide links, and tell you, man, I need to get a little more active on Twitter again. I've been kind of laying low, man, because it's kind of the off season for me. I kind of let the other guys take front and center, like Nick and those guys, Jacob Rudner. Those guys do a good job with all the baseball. So I'd give them a little follow too while you're at it, listeners.
Yeah, for sure. Edgar, good stuff, my man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Shane.
That's
Take
Edgar
care.
Thompson joining us on the Titan MR Hotline. Hope you enjoyed today's program. I want to thank Edgar and Andy Staples for joining us on the Titan MR Hotline. Don't forget, tomorrow we'll have Buddy Martin. We'll have JC Deacon, men's golf coach. We'll discuss what they have to do out in Arizona to try to bring home a national title. Have a great day, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.